Karen Lyle seemed like just another suburban neighbor, quiet, polite, always tending to her garden. Megan Davis was the new girl on the block, young, independent, and unaware she had just moved across the street from a ticking time bomb. What started as a petty neighborhood feud would soon spiral into a twisted obsession, a chilling disappearance, and a murder that would shake the entire community. Maplewood Lane had always been a picture of calm. The lawns were always neatly trimmed, the mailboxes freshly painted, and wind chimes tinkled gently in the morning breeze. It was the kind of neighborhood where people waved at each other during evening walks and left Christmas cookies on doorsteps during the holidays. Nothing dangerous ever happened there until it did. At the far end of the street stood a beige two-story house with flower beds so perfectly manicured that they looked fake. This was the home of Karen Lyle, a middle-aged woman who had lived on Maplewood Lane for almost 2 decades. She was well known by the other residents, not because she was friendly, but because she always seemed to know what everyone else was doing. She didn't work, didn't host guests, and didn't go out much. But her blinds were always slightly tilted, allowing her a clear view of the entire street. Many quietly called her the neighborhood watchdog, though not in a kind way. Across the street, in a small gray bungalow, lived Megan Davis, a newcomer who had moved in just 4 months earlier. Megan was a freelance graphic designer in her late 20s who worked from home and mostly kept to herself. She didn't attend the neighborhood meet and greets and never responded to Karen's passive-aggressive notes about garbage bins or porch lights. This independence immediately rubbed Karen the wrong way. Megan didn't respect the unspoken rules of the street. She didn't smile when she passed Karen in the driveway. She didn't explain herself when she had guests over. In Karen's eyes, Megan was rude, disruptive, and needed to be put in her place. What started as annoyance quickly turned into fixation. Karen began keeping track of Megan's habits, what time her lights went off, when she took her trash out, who visited her house, and for how long. She even kept a handwritten log filled with dates, times, and small details like mail left out too long or suspicious package delivered. The neighborhood saw Karen as quirky but harmless. No one knew how deep her resentment had grown. Then the complaints started. Karen called the city twice about Megan's porch light being too bright. She filed a noise complaint about music that nobody else could hear. She left notes accusing Megan of feeding stray cats. Megan tried to ignore it at first, but the tension became hard to avoid. Her friends noticed Karen watching from across the street during visits. Even deliveries began to be intercepted and returned. Megan once posted online about feeling watched in her own home, but brushed it off as suburban paranoia. What no one knew was that Karen was planning something far more serious than a complaint or a letter. While the rest of the neighborhood focused on lawn care and bake sales, Karen was consumed by the idea that Megan was a threat to the order she had maintained for years. In her mind, Megan wasn't just a bad neighbor, she was a problem that needed to be removed. And Karen believed she was the one who had to do it. The first sign that something was wrong came when Megan's front porch light, which usually stayed on overnight, remained off for 2 consecutive evenings. A package sat untouched at her door, growing damp from the morning dew. Her car hadn't moved from the driveway, and her recycling bins were left unrolled to the curb, something she never forgot. At first, neighbors assumed she was on a short trip, maybe visiting family or taking a break. But the silence stretched on, and concern began to quietly spread. It was Megan's coworker, a woman named Denise, who finally raised the alarm. Megan hadn't logged in for any virtual meetings in 3 days and hadn't responded to emails or texts. Denise contacted local authorities and reported her missing. When the police conducted a welfare check, they found the front door locked and no signs of forced entry. Inside, everything appeared normal, nothing broken or disturbed. Megan's phone was charging on the nightstand, her laptop open on the dining table. Her wallet and keys were still in the bowl near the door, as if she had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. The strangest detail was the cat. Megan's beloved tabby, Luna, was missing. Neighbors hadn't seen it either, though Megan often posted pictures of it lounging on the windowsill. Officers questioned nearby residents, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual. Karen, as expected, was quick to approach the officers. She told them she'd seen Megan dragging a suitcase out to her car around midnight the week before, and assumed she had gone on a spontaneous trip. She mentioned that Megan had seemed distant lately, and that she often kept odd hours. Her comments were noted, but something about them didn't sit right. Flyers with Megan's face went up around town. Her family came into town and made tearful pleas on local news stations. Volunteers searched local parks, wooded areas, and abandoned buildings. The police dug into Megan's financial and phone records, trying to trace any activity. There was nothing. Her bank accounts were untouched. Her phone had gone dark. Days turned into a week. The neighborhood grew quieter, more tense. People started locking their doors at night. Some whispered about Megan possibly running away. Others feared something worse. Karen, meanwhile, was everywhere. She offered to organize a candlelight vigil in Megan's honor and even created a small shrine on her own porch with flowers and a printed photo of Megan smiling. She handed out flyers, brought coffee to the volunteers, and spoke to local news outlets with tearful eyes. Her performance was convincing. She appeared to be a concerned neighbor heartbroken by the sudden loss. But those who paid closer attention noticed things that didn't quite add up: how she always seemed to be the first on the scene, how she seemed more interested in being seen grieving than actually helping. And though no one said it aloud, a few had begun to quietly wonder if Karen knew more than she let on. It was a garbage collector on his early morning route who accidentally uncovered the first real clue. At the edge of town, behind an abandoned hardware store, he noticed a torn black trash bag sitting just outside the dumpster, half open and unusually heavy. The smell was strong and sour, even for garbage. Curious and concerned, he radioed his supervisor, who contacted the police. When officers arrived and opened the bag, they discovered a collection of items that made the scene immediately suspicious: charred clothing, a broken smartphone, and a melted computer mouse. One item still had a faint sticker on it, Megan's name. The evidence was sent to forensics immediately. DNA tests confirmed the clothes had traces of Megan's skin cells. The phone, though damaged, was recoverable. Data pulled from the device showed it had last connected to a Wi-Fi signal registered to a home on Maplewood Lane, the exact home owned by Karen Lyle. Suddenly, the neighbor who had been the face of community concern was now at the center of a criminal investigation. Investigators obtained a warrant and searched Karen's property. On the surface, her house looked ordinary. The living room was filled with porcelain figurines, pastel curtains, and neatly stacked photo albums. But in the basement, behind a locked storage door, they found something far more disturbing. The room smelled sharply of chemicals. Its floor was bleached clean, the air stale from lack of ventilation. In the corner, wrapped in an old blanket, was Megan's missing cat, still alive but clearly neglected. The animal was immediately taken in by animal services, and the room was sealed for forensic testing. Inside a trash bin under the basement stairs, police found a set of rubber gloves, stained with what later tested positive as traces of human blood. Tucked into a cabinet was a burner phone. It had no SIM card but had previously connected to a nearby cell tower around the time Megan went missing. The evidence was growing rapidly, and it all pointed back to Karen. Security footage collected from nearby traffic lights showed Karen's beige sedan near the abandoned dumpster location just after 2 a.m. the night the trash bag was left behind. Another camera, mounted on a neighbor's garage, showed Karen dragging a heavy roll, likely a rug or blanket, into her trunk a day after Megan was last seen. The timeline was tightening, and Karen's story was unraveling. When police brought her in for questioning, Karen maintained her innocence. She insisted the items must have been planted, and that she had no reason to harm Megan. She claimed she barely knew her, but investigators had already built a timeline, supported by forensic evidence, digital data, and inconsistencies in Karen's own statements. Behind her calm exterior and carefully crafted image, something much darker had been brewing. The woman who stood in front of news cameras, begging for Megan to come home, was quickly becoming the prime suspect in a chilling case that had shocked the entire community. As detectives dug deeper into Karen Lyle's life, a much darker pattern began to emerge. What they found wasn't just an obsessive neighbor, but someone who had been quietly unraveling for years. In her bedroom closet, buried beneath old sweaters and board games, police uncovered dozens of notebooks. Each one was filled with detailed observations about the neighborhood: license plate numbers, trash schedules, who mowed their lawn and when, who had guests over and how long they stayed. But the last few notebooks focused almost entirely on Megan Davis. Page after page contained disturbing notes written in tiny, sharp handwriting. There were timestamps of when Megan turned her lights on and off, what she wore each day, and a running list of imagined offenses like walked too loudly at 10:14 p.m. or gave dirty look through window. Karen's digital history told the same story. Her computer contained folders labeled with Megan's name, filled with saved photos taken from her window. She had also conducted hundreds of internet searches related to crime scene cleanup, disposing of evidence, and even how long it took for human remains to decompose. These searches had all been done within the 2 weeks before Megan's disappearance. Forensic experts returned results from the basement, confirming the presence of human blood in microscopic amounts that hadn't been fully cleaned. DNA matched Megan. Beneath a layer of paint on one wall, cadaver dogs alerted to biological traces likely from where a body had temporarily been stored. It was clear now. Megan had never left town. She had been killed inside that very house. The motive became more apparent as psychologists reviewed Karen's files. She wasn't just irritated by Megan, she was obsessed. Megan represented something Karen couldn't control: her independence, her youth, her refusal to conform to the unspoken rules of Maplewood Lane. Karen's world was built around structure and order, and Megan disrupted it simply by existing on her own terms. In Karen's mind, that made her dangerous. Detectives also found that Karen had borrowed gardening equipment from a local supplier just days after Megan vanished. The store had filed a report about a stolen wood chipper that was never returned. It had been left abandoned on a back road, wiped down but not completely clean. Soil and trace blood found inside matched Megan's DNA, though no full remains were ever recovered. Investigators believe Karen used the equipment to dispose of the body, scattering what was left in several locations to make discovery nearly impossible. Despite overwhelming evidence, Karen remained eerily calm. During court proceedings, she showed little emotion. She didn't confess, didn't express remorse, and refused to answer questions about the body's final location. It was as if, in her mind, she had done what needed to be done. She had erased the problem. The neighborhood that once saw her as a harmless busybody now saw her for what she really was: a calculating killer who believed she could get away with murder by hiding behind a friendly smile and a well-kept lawn. The trial of Karen Lyle drew national attention. The media dubbed her the neighbor next door, highlighting the chilling contrast between her public image and the brutality of her crime. Courtroom seats were packed with reporters, curious residents, and members of Megan's grieving family. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: surveillance footage, forensic reports, computer search histories, and eyewitness accounts. The jury was shown photos of the bleach-stained basement, screenshots of Karen's disturbing online searches, and pages from the obsessive notebooks detailing Megan's every move. The timeline of events, combined with the physical evidence and digital footprints, left little doubt about what had occurred. Karen's defense argued that she was mentally unwell, driven by paranoia and delusions. They claimed she didn't understand the consequences of her actions, painting her as someone who had spiraled into isolation and lost touch with reality. But expert witnesses rejected that theory, stating that Karen's actions were methodical, calculated, and showed a clear intent to cover up the crime. Her efforts to clean the scene, dispose of the body, and manipulate the narrative with vigils and interviews were all signs of someone who understood exactly what they were doing. It took the jury less than 2 hours to return with a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. Karen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She showed no visible reaction as the sentence was read. No tears, no apology, just the same vacant stare that had unsettled many during the trial. Even after being convicted, she refused to say where Megan's body was. The lack of closure only deepened the family's pain. Maplewood Lane changed forever. The beige house with perfect flower beds was sold and repainted. Most neighbors avoided even walking past it. Megan's former home was turned into a memorial by her family. A plaque was placed by the front steps, surrounded by fresh flowers, candles, and notes from those who knew her. Her cat, Luna, recovered and was taken in by Megan's sister. The animal became a symbol of survival, one small piece of Megan's life that endured. The case left a permanent scar on the community. People began to question how well they really knew their neighbors. Friendly waves were replaced by suspicious glances. New security cameras popped up on porches. Neighborhood watch groups formed, not just to prevent theft, but to monitor each other more closely. Trust had been broken, and fear had taken its place. Though the story eventually faded from headlines, its impact lingered. True crime enthusiasts retold it in podcasts and documentaries, often focusing on how someone so seemingly ordinary could commit such a horrific act. Karen Lyle became a case study in hidden danger, how obsession, resentment, and the need for control can turn a person into a monster behind closed doors. And Megan Davis became a reminder of how quickly a life can be taken by someone who simply couldn't let go of their need to be in charge.